Watch this.
Did they or didn't they? A question of exposure at a North Idaho drag show began with an edited video, but now seems to be ending, again, with the decision of a jury.
I'm ecstatic, so this is a great day for us.
A great day more than a decade ago doesn't mean it's been easy since, or will be for Idaho's LGBTQ community. A look back on Idaho's history and possible future with same-sex marriage.
How in the world did they do it, and how in the world were we able to bring those remains home?
For the first time in 80 years, a fallen Idaho soldier has come home. The remarkable journey that brought 2nd Lieutenant Charles Atterbury back to Parma. For anyone who has purchased a house or bought a business, you know about a letter of intent. It's that thing you sign to say, I want to buy this if this criteria is met. You know, like the financials work, the inspection doesn't come back full of mold, that kind of stuff. Well, today we're learning that's kind of what happened last week with the Qatari Air Force and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Remember that surprise announcement that seemed to surprise everyone within the state of Idaho, from the governor down to the mayor of Mountain Home, that America was going to build a Qatari facility on Mountain Home Air Force Base? Well, we've since learned a few details about that plan, and that's kind of where we find the devil, or lack thereof in this case. Senator Mike Crapo's office sent us a statement today saying the recent signing was a ceremonial announcement of the work to commence while final details are worked out. The formal agreement has not yet been signed or released. So, yeah, this is not a done deal by any stretch. Crapo's office wasn't able to provide any other details about when a formal agreement might be reached. But maybe they will find out like the rest of us, kind of like what we did last week. However, what we do know, this idea didn't spring out of nowhere, out of the desert of southern Idaho. It goes back to 2017 after the U.S. sold Qatar billions of dollars worth of F-15 fighter jets. So stay tuned. It's in the eye of the beholder. Not beauty necessarily, but what someone sees with their own eyes, or in this case, by viewing a highly edited video. You might remember 3 summers ago when a drag performer was accused of exposing himself to children in the audience of a performance at Pride in the Park in Coeur d'Alene. Then there was a blurred video disseminated by a far-right blogger claiming that's exactly what happened. There was exposure, except it didn't. After reviewing the unedited video, Coeur d'Alene prosecutor's office says it didn't show any exposure. The drag performer, then sued the women who put out, or the woman, I should say, who put out the video, and then won more than $1 million in a defamation case. But that didn't stop the Idaho Family Policy Center from using that video and a claim of exposure on a petition to protect children from drag shows. But now an Idaho District Court judge says those statements made by the conservative advocacy group and its leaders were demonstrably false, clearing the way for another defamation jury trial. Joe Paris breaks down the case and what comes next.
An Idaho jury will decide if false statements made about drag performer Eric Posey are defamatory following a summer 2022 performance at Pride in the Park in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. After the event, blogger Summer Bushnell posted an edited video of Posey's performance with the crotch area blurred, asking if he could be arrested for exposing his genitals to minors in the crowd. The Coeur d'Alene prosecutor's office reviewed the footage and found no evidence of exposure. Despite this, the Idaho Family Policy Center, which describes itself as Idaho's premier conservative Christian policy research and educational organization, they posted an online petition and later a newsletter claiming that the performer exposed himself to an audience that included children, adding to their claims, quote, "These creeps are using our children as pawns for their perverse sexual desires." The then Policy Center podcast host, Josh Bales, repeated the claims, stating that he saw the video.
And let me just add this too. I saw the video and it's extremely disturbing, not only for children, but for adults. Yeah. I mean, his genitals actually came out of his underwear at one point.
Bales and Policy Center President Blaine Canzati were on that podcast, and they are named as defendants. In his 20-page decision, 4th Judicial District Judge Patrick Miller conducted an exhaustive review of video evidence. The defendants argued their statements were true based on enhanced video that, when slowed down, zoomed in, and brightened, showed what they claimed was a testicle visible for less than a second. Judge Miller found this unpersuasive, ruling that the statement, quote, The Idaho Family Policy Center has reviewed the unedited footage and confirms it portrays public exposure of the performer's genitalia. Judge found that false, noting that, quote, there is no evidence in the record that anyone actually saw the sub-1 second shadow at the time of Mr. Posey's performance. The court granted partial summary judgment on falsity, but left questions of defamation per se for a jury to decide on. Posey argues that statements falsely accused him of crimes, including sexual abuse of a child and indecent exposure. Judge Miller also allowed Posey to pursue punitive damages, finding substantial evidence of, quote, a bad act and bad state of mind, and a, quote, level of animosity, suggesting defendants acted with an extremely harmful state of mind. The Idaho Family Policy Center responded that they stand by their statements and expect to be vindicated, saying, quote, while the liberal media will spin this as a loss for Idaho Family Policy Center, this case is far from over. Blaine Canzotti, Josh Bales, and the Idaho Family Policy Center stand by their statements they've made, and the IFPC Board of Directors believes, again, they will be vindicated in the end. So the jury trial is set for next April, and Brian, with all things of this nature, deals can be made, but we are expecting now to have a jury trial next year.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I did read about this in Investigate West. Brandon Durst was the one that edited this video that they all looked at to saw this shadow, correct?
Yeah.
6 hours.
Yeah, and there were sealed depositions that we don't have access to, but Investigate West had a great write-up on this where, yes, there was significant effort into this enhanced or edited video.
Okay, we know Brandon Durst because he was the former superintendent up in Bonner County, West Bonner County, and running for office.
There you go. You owe me a Coke.
Thanks, Joe. Well, the battle over who can marry whom in the state of Idaho doesn't go back, as far as you might think. Well, I mean, we did have laws banning interracial marriage dating back to 1864, which was amended in 1921 to include, and I'm quoting here, Mongolians, Negroes, or mulattoes. Well, those laws were eventually repealed, but not until 1959. But when it came to gender, there was nothing in our original state constitution defining marriage. That didn't happen until 2006, when Idaho voters agreed to amend the Constitution to say, quote, a marriage between a man and a woman is the only domestic legal union that shall be valid or recognized in this state. And that was the case for more than 7 years, until that amendment was confirmed to be unconstitutional by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. That happened 11 years ago today, making same-sex marriage legal in Idaho. Well, in today's 208 Redial, the reaction to years-long battle for the marriage equality in the Gem State.
All you need is love, love.
Late Friday afternoon, the U.S. Supreme Court lifted the hold on same-sex marriages in Idaho. It ended a roller coaster journey for the plaintiffs in this case.
And then this week has been crazy. This week has been insane.
Sue Latta and her partner Tracy were married in California. Now that marriage is recognized in Idaho.
And equal protection under the law is an important thing. That marriage matters intrinsically and extrinsically. It matters, taxes and estate planning and all that stuff, but it also matters being, legally recognized.
Latta says this is an unprecedented civil rights battle with states across the country fighting for same-sex marriage.
I love the idea that we fought this battle and we get to go down in history as the people who at least won it for the Ninth Circuit, or at least won it for Idaho.
She plans to get back to married life legally in Idaho for the first time. Fellow plaintiff Amber Byerly and her partner say it's about time.
We love Idaho, and you know what? Idaho's ready for this, and I really hope that any detractors, including the governor, would just understand that.
Governor Otter and the state appealed the decision all the way to the Supreme Court. Now couples are just waiting for the Ninth Circuit Court to give the go-ahead.
We've been waiting for this for, since we've been together, and then there's been so many it can happen, and then letdowns, and so we just want it to happen and be married and enjoy the benefits that everyone else gets, and then go on with our lives.
Latta says the next step is getting recognition in the Idaho Human Rights Act.
Well, more on the Human Rights Act push in a moment. But back to the part of that story where Amber Byerly hoped any detractors, including Governor Butch Otter, would just understand Idaho is ready for this. Well, that sentiment didn't quite make it to the second floor of the State House because Governor Otter would appeal that decision of the Ninth Circuit Court to the U.S. Supreme Court. However, the justices already agreed to hear another case from several other states, and in June of 2015, the court's opinion in Obergefell versus Hodges guaranteed states must recognize same-sex marriage in all 50 states, basically nullifying Idaho's 2006 amendment. but that hasn't ended the push to enforce it. Remember this past session when Republican Representative Heather Scott, hoping to piggyback on the Dobbs decision out of the Supreme Court, was pushing a House joint memorial, basically a strongly worded letter asking the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell. She called it a matter of federalism.
This is not a memorial about defining marriage. It's about who gets to define marriage. Do we want the state to make those decisions, or do we want to allow the Supreme Court to make those decisions?
Okay, so she doesn't want the Supreme Court to make that decision, yet her joint memorial does just that. She says, be it further resolved that the Idaho legislature calls upon the Supreme Court of the United States to reverse Obergefell and restore, and this is where it gets into this point, the natural definition of marriage, a union of one man and one woman. Well, that memorial did pass the House 46-24 last session, but it never got a hearing in the Senate. Now, about getting LGBTQ couples getting recognition in the Idaho Human Rights Act, that still hasn't happened. Going back to 2006, such a bill has only received one public hearing.
I screamed, I cried, I called everybody up that I knew. Yeah.
On September 27th, remains known as X267 were finally identified as Michael Salerno.
The National Memorial Cemetery called the Punch Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been there?
Yeah.
That's where your brother's been.
I didn't even know he was there.
He's been there since 1949.
7 years ago, we brought you the story of Boise and Jean Roman and how her family found out her brother was buried in the Punch Bowl in Hawaii, formerly known as the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific. For 75 years, they had no idea where he was, unable to bring him back home to Pennsylvania. Private First Class Michael Salerno, Marine Corps, was killed in the Battle of Tarawa, a tiny island in the Pacific where nearly 1,100 Marines lost their lives. Only about half were eventually recovered and nearly 100 were unidentifiable. Salerno was one of those unknown until September of 2018, as you just heard. But he was just one of hundreds of unknown soldiers buried in the Punch Bowl. And since that time, dozens more have been reunited with their families. Last week, another Idaho family got the moment they had been waiting decades to see. 88 years ago, a young man from Parma answered his country's call and fought in a war half a world away and never came back. But he's home now. Here's Hunter Funk.
Flights come in every day at the Boise airport. But this flight, on this day, it's a little different. Because for the first time in 80 years, Second Lieutenant Charles Atterbury finally made it back home. A soldier captured, killed, and unidentified since World War II, now returning to the state where his story began, and where his family finally got the chance to meet him.
I said, I'm glad you're home.
Oh, it was just unbelievable. I just thought, oh, how much it would have meant to his mother. I just thought I was so glad at least I was here in her behalf.
From the tarmac, the Idaho National Guard and the Boise Valley POW MIA riders escorted him through the Treasure Valley to the funeral home. Atterbury was just 26 years old when he died. Born in Parma, he did what most his family did.
A lot of military in our family. All 4 of the brothers served in the military. Their offspring, 5 of them had served in the military.
Charles joined the Army in 1937. He served in Alaska for 2 years. Then he was deployed to the Philippines in September 1940. His unit, the 31st Infantry Division, fought in the Philippines as the Japanese were advancing through the Pacific. In January 1941, he was promoted to 2nd Lieutenant, defending Manila until December of that year. At that point, Charles was captured, enduring what's known as the Bataan Death March in April 1942.
Well, he survived that. 65 miles of walking, hardly any water, hardly any rations. If you fell, you died. And if you weren't dead when you hit the ground, the Japanese killed you. They bayoneted and shot people. It was terrible. We can't even, today in our society, we can't even begin to believe. You can't believe the heinous stuff that happened.
As a prisoner of war, he went through the unimaginable, surviving what were called the hell ships, which were vessels that ferried prisoners across the Pacific.
Conditions unbearable. They had no plumbing. They had no sanitary efficient. They were provided a minimal amount of, less than a cup of rice a day and very little water.
Charles made it through these transports until January 1945.
Carrier aircraft from the USS Hornet scored a direct hit on the Maru, killed 300 instantly.
Charles is believed to have survived the hit, but died a few days later. And for generations, this was all his family knew.
What Charles went through, I mean, as a prisoner, being on those Japanese hell ships, and being killed so close to when the war was over, and he could have come home. And it's just almost unbelievable.
His body became one of hundreds of unidentified U.S. soldiers buried in a mass grave in Takeo Harbor, Formosa. In 1949, he became one of 407 unknown soldiers in the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific of Hawaii. But the family wouldn't learn those details until science and time did what hope alone could not. In 2018, the U.S. military began using DNA testing to identify soldiers buried in that mass grave. Ray and other relatives submitted samples and waited.
Hi, Cassie.
On June 6, 2025,
I work for Department of the Army.
They got the call they never thought would come.
I have an update for the family regarding your great uncle, Second Lieutenant Charles Atterbury. We lost him, of course, in World War II. I really look forward to speaking to the family. If you'll give me a call back as soon as you get this.
And lo and behold, we got that impossible phone call in June from the case manager for Charles.
A 100% DNA match.
It's just unbelievable to get a phone call like that.
For decades, the Atterbury family held on to fragments of his memories. Second Lieutenant Charles Atterbury was officially accounted for. And on Monday, in Parma, there was a full military service for a man who had been gone longer than most people at the service had been alive.
Welcome home, Charles Atterbury. May you find rest, and may our great God continue to bless your family.
Charles was placed right beside his parents A homecoming 8 decades overdue.
The only thing I really had to say was, I wish I got to know you. I think I liked him.
After all these years, finally, he can be laid to rest with his mother and dad in that little cemetery.
A chapter finally closed, giving the family much needed closure. Though there is still one question that still remains. Charles's brother Lloyd was a pilot in the military, and Lloyd became missing in action in 1943 after it was reported that he was shot down. His body was never recovered. The Atterbury say they will just have to keep believing in the power of hope.
Yeah, they do. And those stories always get to me. It's a great story that, of course, the people doing that, the agency doing God's work. And so, yeah, finally home.
Yeah, couldn't keep my eyes dry for that one.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Hunter. Nice job. Well, so Atterbury's family did submit a DNA sample that same year. We brought you the story about Private First Class Michael Salerno back in 2018. So it took him 7 years to come to this appropriate conclusion. Well, this has happened because of what's happening in a lab located above a bowling alley on Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. The POW-MIA Accounting Agency, that lab, along with a sister lab in Hawaii, opened in 2013. And their task was to identify the nearly 72,000 soldiers unaccounted for from World War II and the 10,000 more or so from our conflicts since. That first year, in 2013, the agency identified 59 service members by going to old battlefields and just digging around. Then in 2015, Congress mandated they up their output, and they identify at least 200 bodies a year. So they started opening graves of the unknown. And they've been able to find out some of those coffins contain not one, but pieces of up to 3 different Marines or soldiers killed in action. And since then, they've uncovered more than 1,000. In 2022, the number of unknowns named rose to 134. In 2023, it was 159. Last year, they identified 172, and this year, 2025, the agency has accounted for and reunited 231 formerly unknown soldiers, including Parma's Charles Atterbury. There are still just under 81,000 Americans unaccounted for from World War II through today. Kathy in Eagle looks forward to the day when marriage is simply called marriage and defined as a committed union between two people who love each other and want to build a life together. We don't go out for same-sex lunch or participate in same-sex carpools, do we? So good Christians presented a falsely edited video of the drag performer. Does the commandment against bearing false witness not apply to them, asks Paul in Boise. The drag king case in Coeur d'Alene is nuts. See what you did there. How about we fight for our basic rights like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? It's a good question. See you tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.